Hello, I'm Untitled Chapter. Welcome. Welcome. Welcome to my opening. Bonjour and welcome to my opening, where I serve as your very own personal shopper for literary fiction, where I'll read the openings of books that I recommend for one reason or another. Here we are in our cozy little hideout in the glorious summer of June, which also happens to be Gay Pride Month. So if you hear the sounds of the sirens or vrooming and vavooming, it could just be dykes on bikes or boys on toys or gays on whirligigs or whatever it is the kids get up to these days. I don't really know. I try to stay out of the fray. But since it is Gay Pride Month, I thought it would be wonderful to go to the gayest of gay novels by the gayest of gay writers, famous mama's boy and notorious closeted homosexual, Marcel Proust. Marcel Proust is highly revered in the literary community, and of course he's best known for this mammoth novel called La recherche de temps perdu. Everyone I know who has read the entire thing loves it, adores it, raves about it. Everyone except me. Now, I do recommend that you read it, just like I recommend an hour on the elliptical in the morning, followed by another hour on the treadmill, and do that every day for about a year, and you can't help but be better as a result. In the same way, I recommend reading La recherche de temps perdu. Now, my experience was that it is quite good to begin with. I read the first 60 pages and there's a slight lag time in getting into it. But once I did get into it, it's sumptuous, gorgeous language. And after about 60 pages, you get to the point of the petite Madeleine with tea that everybody knows about. And I admit I sobbed. And I thought, well, if this is what it's like every 60 pages, I'm in for the long haul. It didn't, however, pan out as I had expected. But I still recommend that you read it, and I'm going to read the beginning of it for you. A little bit about Proust. I've taken some notes. Valentin Louis Georges Eugène Marcel Proust was born July 10, 1871, and died November 18, 1922, at the tender age of 51. He was a sickly child who suffered from many bouts of asthma, and as a result often didn't go to school, but he did quite cotton to literature, and he became a very well-read person. My favorite story about Proust is that his father really wanted him to get a job. And so he got a job at Bibliothèque Mazarine and exerted considerable effort in obtaining sick leave, which went on for years and years and years until they decided that he had in fact resigned his position. He never actually worked a day in his life, as far as we know. He began writing La recherche when he was 38 years old, and the last 3 volumes were published after he had died, posthumously, edited by his brother. It was originally translated into English by C. K. Scott Moncrief as Remembrance of Things Past, and this translation was later revised by Terence Kilman and D.J. Enright, and the title was retranslated. Instead of Remembrance of Things Past, it's now In Search of Lost Time, which actually does sound like a much better translation of La recherche de temps perdu. One thing I will mention is that I don't know if you've ever seen these Penguin Lives books. This one about Marcel Proust was written by Edmund White, but Penguin has this wonderful line of books, all of biographies written by famous writers about famous writers, and they're just so wonderful. I can't recommend them enough. So now let's get into the very first volume of In Search of Lost Time. The first volume is Swan's Way. You can see this wonderful boxed set. This is the translation, the combined translation by Moncrief Kilmartin and D.J. Enright. À la recherche de temps perdu by Marcel Proust, Volume 1, Swan's Way, Part 1, Combray. For a long time, I would go to bed early. Sometimes, the candle barely out, my eyes closed so quickly that I did not have time to tell myself I'm falling asleep. And half an hour later, the thought that it was time to look for sleep would awaken me. I would make as if to put away the book which I imagined was still in my hands, and to blow out the light. I had gone on thinking, while I was asleep, about what I had just been reading, but these thoughts had taken a peculiar turn. It seemed to me that I myself was the immediate subject of my book. A church, a quartet, the rivalry between Francois I and Charles V. This impression would persist for some moments after I awoke. It did not offend my reason, but lay like scales upon my eyes, and prevented them from registering the fact that the candle was no longer burning. Then it would begin to seem unintelligible, as the thoughts of a previous existence must be after reincarnation. The subject of my book would separate itself from me, leaving me free to apply myself to it or not. And at the same time my sight would return, and I would be astonished to find myself in a state of darkness, pleasant and restful enough for my eyes, but even more, perhaps, for my mind, to which it appeared incomprehensible, without a cause, something dark indeed. I would ask myself what time it could be. I could hear the whistling of trains, which now nearer and now further off, punctuating the distance like the note of a bird in a forest, showed me in perspective the deserted countryside through which a traveler is hurrying toward the nearby station. And the path he is taking will be engraved on his memory by the excitement induced by strange surroundings, by unaccustomed activities, by the conversation he has had, and the farewells exchanged beneath an unfamiliar lamp that still echo in his ears amid the silence of the night, and by the happy prospect of beginning home again. I would lay my cheeks gently against the comfortable cheeks of my pillow, as plump and fresh as the cheeks of childhood. I would strike a match to look at my watch. Nearly midnight. The hour when an invalid, who has been obliged to set out on a journey and to sleep in a strange hotel, awakened by a sudden spasm, sees with glad relief a streak of daylight showing under his door. Thank God it is morning. The servants will be about in a minute. He can ring, and someone will come to look after him. The thought of being assuaged gives him strength to endure his pain. He is certain he heard footsteps. They come nearer, and then die away. The ray of light beneath his door is extinguished. It is midnight. Someone has just turned down the gas. The last servant has gone to bed, and he must lie all night, suffering without remedy. I would fall asleep again, and thereafter would reawaken for short snatches only, just long enough to hear the regular creaking of the wainscot, or to open my eyes to stare at the shifting kaleidoscope of the darkness, to savor, in a momentary glimmer of consciousness, the sleep which lay heavy upon the furniture, the room, that whole of which I formed no more than a small part, and whose insensibility I should very soon return to share. Or else, while sleeping, I had drifted back to an earlier stage in my life, now forever outgrown, and had come under the thrall of one of my childish terrors, such as that old terror of my great-uncle's pulling my curls, which was effectually dispelled on the day the dawn of a new era to me, when they were finally cropped from my head. I had forgotten that event during my sleep, but I remembered it again immediately I had succeeded in waking myself up to escape my great-uncle's fingers, and as a measure of precaution, I would bury the whole of my head in the pillow before returning to the world of dreams. Pretty good, I'll have to admit. I mean, perhaps I should give a second chance. Or maybe not. Perhaps you should give it a chance and tell me all about it when we meet again. In the meantime, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share the video, and join me again, and we'll find out what's good to read. Bye for now. I'm Untitled Chapter. Remember that the world is full of wonder. Pay attention. Mwah.